Okay, good evening. Again, our apologies for our late start, but my name is Patrick Ingram. I am 464. I'm running for City Council, and this is our Friday, our Fireside Friday. So it's a pleasure to have y'all join us. Again, thank you so much for your patience as we dealt with some technical difficulties in our preparation for this event. So it's a pleasure to have y'all join us. So why am I running? This campaign is so important for me because of the simple fact that for the past 4 years, we've had leadership that has not been present and visible in this community. This city has the capability and the ability to progress forward and address and deal with issues that we haven't in a very long time. So again, welcome back to our Fireside Friday. We have two special guests tonight. We'll first start off with Ms. Brandi Jarmon. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everybody, I'm Ms. Brandi Jarmon. Of course, I am a local resident, community activist, leader, amongst so many other things, mother, student, and many, many more. I spend my time here in Petersburg trying to help as many people as I can, as well as getting involved in social action and social justice, on top of many other things I do outside of here, but it pretty much revolves around helping people.
Awesome. What does Petersburg mean to you?
Petersburg is love and family to me. My parents brought us here. They're a military family. We came from Fort Lee, out in Jackson Circle, and ended up over here in Oakhurst. I grew up here in middle school and elementary school, and I went to high school here. Petersburg became my family, as my dad's family is from Tennessee. My mom's side is northern going on up. I got my degree, undergrad at Virginia State University. Got my master's at Virginia State University, which we say Petersburg. Long before they claimed Chesterfield, we've always said Petersburg. Both my kids are students or were students at Petersburg. My son graduated from Petersburg High School. It's now his senior year at Virginia State University. My daughter, this is her junior year at Petersburg High School, but it's her freshman year at Richard Bland. So our family's deep here. My sister and her kids are here. My mother worked for Petersburg for a long, long time, both within city administration as well as the police department. So for me, Petersburg is love and home. You know, I come home, I receive love every time. Well, I did. We're bringing it back because I still receive love here, but we're hoping that everybody gets that feeling. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Giovanni, Brusto, tell us some about yourself and what does Petersburg mean for you?
All right, I'm a fairly new resident, although I've been in the area for close to 3 years now. I think 2 in Petersburg as of January. I'm the communications director for Petersburg Solution, which is a community group that's more focused on bringing about policy recommendations for the city's issues versus this negative cloud that's hanging over the city. When I try to reach out to friends and business owners in DC, where I'm from, the issue is that the first thing that they do is Google the city and say, "Oh my God, I don't want to come there." You know, the reputation is such. So as much as I can with my PR skills, etc., whatever is possible to try and change that tide, then that's what I'm here for.
What does Petersburg mean to you?
Petersburg is one, a new home. Secondly, it's a beautifully undervalued city. The history here is amazing, and I just would like to polish it off a little bit and try to show the rest of the world the good parts that we hear now.
You know, I didn't answer that question, but for me, I can agree to both of y'all. It's love, it's like family, it's being in a city that has so much to offer, but we always see the negative sides of that. So it's a mixed bag, but it's all positive things when I look at Petersburg myself. But you know, in the past 4 years, especially this election cycle, one of the things that has been consistently brought up online in different groups, in the news and also in the streets, is the lack of accountability from our city officials, the administration, but also council members. So let's talk about that a little bit. What are your experiences with that? What are your thoughts on that? And really, how can we address those issues? Whomever wants to start.
So for the accountability, I mean, I would say that people get away with things because they can. So the fact that, as many people as possible, I would like to see them show up to city council meetings. I try to live tweet them all. I write reports of them afterwards. I have a newsletter where I publish it as well. But now that the meetings are virtual, there's not really an excuse for us to, not be a part of it. And I try to make sure that people are a part of it as much as possible. But things like, I know that when I first came here, the news was terrible. I mean, I think that there was $8 or $9 million that the city couldn't find. I think there were like uncashed checks that were just sitting inside of the treasurer's office, oops. The feds that were raiding multiple agencies, and the same people happening to still be, working in the city administration without any accountability. So as I said, it's just as many people as can be a part of the political process to hold these people accountable. Right?
But you make it a good point, because in the beginning you made it that from the constituent or the resident aspect, they should be showing up,
Yes.
letting their voice be heard, being a part of the process, which is something that we don't see happen, especially in times of COVID where it's virtual. Because I know I saw a post by you earlier saying, wow, this last meeting no one spoke. And that, for me, I was like, darn it, like I missed out on my opportunity. But you're right, we need to have more people speaking out against their issues and problems that they're experiencing, because then there's an accountability piece of it's on the record. If you bring up something, it's on the record. It can always be used against the administration and the council members.
And things are a little different these days because we have new media. We have several new forums or several new avenues that we can share what's happening than in the past. So what they probably could have gotten away with 5-10 years ago, not necessarily so much these days. And I'll add that City Council, I believe, uses a transcription service.
Yeah.
So the meetings are transcribed again, down to the word. And that's important because I've kind of also run a campaign in Hopewell, and their meetings are just a record of votes. So you have no idea what happened.
Oh, wow.
And they're like 3 minutes of minutes. So that's the good part. If we say something, there it's online for everyone to see.
And I think one of the, the biggest issues that some of the citizens, to include me, get frustrated about is this has been not just a new fight for us. We're talking about a couple years now, going back to the beginning of, talking about water bill scandals and everything, being in City Hall meetings packed with signs up about water and everything, and it's gotten to a head, I think. So it's aligned with accountability. It goes twofold. It's accountability for us as citizens, and it's accountability for the people we elect. So in the beginning, people we elect, they have to sustain this accountability, but if left unchecked by us, then of course they go amok. We're now frustrated because we've started checking, and it's not a new checking process. One thing that I've seen happen in this last political cycle, not starting with this election race, but last election race, was the spring up of all of the new groups on Facebook. And even though sometimes it feels like it's a competition, we don't understand how all of that was a good.
Yeah.
That brought conversation from us citizens that did not happen before. It was only a certain sect. I knew when I went to City Hall meetings where my whole row was going to sit. I knew exactly what side they were going to sit on, who was going to be there at every meeting. So these groups cause other people now that may not attend meetings, which we'll talk about like links and stuff, to now be able to hold our city council members accountable. And now it's more about transparency than it is accountability, because we see what you're doing.
Yes.
It's there. We're holding you accountable
Right.
by putting it in the public now.
So I'm trying to amplify it as much
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah.
It's a new day.
So I guess even talking about transparency, how do we hold our council members now and in the future? Because it's a new day on the horizon. So how, for now and in the future, how do we hold them accountable? But how do we acknowledge to them, those individuals, about the need for transparency? Because again, we look at even right now with the majority of constituency asking for hybrid meetings, right? Because again, there are barriers for people to have access to phones, realistically, and also internet access, because we don't have free broadband in the city. So again, with that piece, how do we address that? How do we hold the council members in office right now, especially those in election cycle, accountable and I guess the easy way to say that is it's hard because they're nowhere to be seen. But now that they're starting to show their face, how do we hold them accountable, especially acknowledge that transparency piece?
We can recommend, give some technical recommendations. I mean, the council's inside of one room meeting. I think that in the train station, there's the lobby space, which is probably the, where everyone else will be. You can set up a monitor inside for everyone else in there to stay, away from the council mass, and it's possible. It's just that, we're not the most technologically advanced city, which came up during the last meeting. I try to give a little credit for the fact that they have been trying some. I know the city manager said that the city was going to start live streaming the meetings directly on the city website. So I mean, it's a little bit more improvement than before. But as you said, there are people who cannot come in person, and so there, I just gave my suggestion for how to do a hybrid meeting, and very well as possible.
Right.
I've done these several times. So
It's possible. It's possible, and I think the thing is that, and we'll get into this later, it's about, from the very beginning of this issue, being proactive and moving forward to address the issues head on, rather than being in a space now in September saying, oh, it's time to renew that, continuity agreement. How we don't have the means. We had the time to have the means, we just didn't use our time wisely.
And I just hate to piggyback, but like my biggest thing with that is I always think we got to think backwards, we got to think forward. So how do we, what were we supposed to be doing? How did we get here? And if we were doing what we were supposed to do, we wouldn't have communication. Well, I jumped ahead. We wouldn't have accountability that leads to transparency. That at the root cause is communication issues.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about root cause communication issues, each of these people are council people. Number one thing is, how do we get transparency? You need to communicate. Now, from my head, and it's just me, excuse me, I don't know all the codes and the laws, but from my head, if I'm a council person, I want to meet with my ward before I meet with the rest of the 6 other people on my council. I need to go over whatever needs to be discussed with my council people, because I'm a representative.
Right.
So I need to have some type of meeting with my people so they aren't blindsided, they're aware. So even if I choose to vote against them, they heard me. They were aware of what was going on. A lot of this is blindsidedness, and in the guise of we are having you there publicly for this one meeting. As we talk about that, the time periods could go. Now we're in a COVID stage where, as you realize, this came out of nowhere. So you weren't prepared, and you had to deal with a couple of months of people not knowing how to utilize these equipment. And let's not forget, a lot of our elders that actually participated in these town hall meetings are not on these devices. Right. They're not. And those are the people that are missing a lot of that crucial information, and they're really getting blindsided, and they're looking for more communication, how long these things are going to last. So it really is at the baseline of everything. Communication can solve a lot of issues. We can agree to disagree, but I can't say nothing if you told me.
And the thing is that's a great point, because if we would have had the ability to know that our council people were going to be voting on the reconnection of water services in the midst of pandemic, and be able to, even if we had to yell at them, curse at them, have conversation, at least we knew it was coming. But really, that gave the council person more than enough opportunity to hear the voice of their ward, of their constituency, and be in a better position to make the right choice, or at least provide an alternative to, again, if you're going to vote no, then come up with a solution to the problem to get to the end of the road. I think we can all agree with that. I mean, regardless of where we sit on the political spectrum, I think that at the end of the day, it does not do a service to anybody to have no water in the midst of a pandemic, and the root cause of it is a systemic issue of not addressing the antiquated technology of our water billing system. I mean, look at it now. We're getting bills, they're all over the place. Are they exactly the same amount that you had from the last month? So,
I mean, it was very odd, because for every single council meeting, there were discussions of all of these people are sort of sometimes by the ways of, this many people that we're not paying. And, not knowing what those connections were. And this has been an issue, of course, for I don't know how long, for as far as the people who were not paying. but you picked the worst possible time to decide to collect. So that was very head stretch worthy.
And then the problem is, you can't say people aren't paying when people's payments weren't being cashed.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I'm sorry.
how can we say that?
And those
You know, we
payments-
have to
the
take.
payments were taking something like 45 days.
It's
as well.
and I had an issue, and I had to go in and handle this for a family member, and he's one of our elders, but he was frustrated to the point another family member had to call and say, "Can you go down to City Hall and handle this?" And I handled the situation, but I told the young lady at the desk, "I'm gonna tell you what you guys' problem is, but I'm gonna tell you so you can tell everybody else, because the two people in front of me got disgusted and walked off. And your attitude with me was, it's nothing we can do. The billing system says this, but common sense says 1 + 1 = 2 and 3. And it really was as simple as you weren't payments. Somewhere payments were missing, and they forget our elders coming in with books. In these groups, there are elders talking, saying, I keep every water bill I can have for 10 years. I write down every payment, and you keep telling me it's wrong, it's wrong. We understand everybody's system has issues, but when are you going to own up to the issues so we can fix it?
Yeah.
The problem is we're not owning up to our issues, and you're making the rest of us as citizens think that we're seeing ghosts, or we're going cuckoo crazy in the head when we're looking at our bills. And that is very disheartening when you're talking about disenfranchised people wondering how they're going to make payments and make bills, and you're scaring them to death with a water bill that even as individual council people, you can't take 5 seconds out of your day to schedule a meeting, be it an online Zoom for your just your ward, be it everybody. I put it like this: a lot of campaigns been out here doing some miraculous things. They've been able to have people come out and help, and they've also been able to hear voices. Rallies have been held. We have current council that can't do that. Are we saying we need to get rid of everybody on council that can't even pay attention to the candidates that are getting information out to their people and solving these issues? Because communication solves a lot. And that is our biggest thing with down with the water bill. They refuse to take accountability for the issue so that help can come with that. Because it's frustrating that people that work business. It's as simple as, listen, hire down at Labor Reddit and get your 10 people to come in here and clean that back office.
That's true.
This is crazy right now.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I mean, these were technical issues, and all I can say is that going through previous council minutes for years, this came up when the city manager first started, and she said that she would be handling these technical issues. This was 2017, and I did all types of searches, and I could not find anything on this until maybe 6 months ago, where this came up again as far as how they would address the tech issues. I actually had made a recommendation from another municipality to help. I don't know where that went, but I don't know. It's really hard to imagine.
I hear a lot of things get lost down there.
These water issues. I mean, I think after the third council meeting, where I heard people getting up and bringing up the same thing, I said, I don't know how you all do this. I think Ron Flock got up and asked about a deed to his house, something with the records. And 12 months later, because I think I skipped a year or so between meetings, but 12 months later, and he got up and asked the exact same question. I said, how is this even possible? How do you all function like this?
Right.
How are you all not protesting outside during council meetings? Because if I came back every month for 12 months asking the same question, I'll be outside with pickets, I guarantee you.
It's a reality, and unfortunately, it's the thing is that if candidates like you said can do it, I mean, in meet with constituency and be present online, disseminating and giving out information, and I'll tell you why it can't be done is because they're not embracing the benefits of technology. Again, it's about benefiting technology to give that information out. But I think also that the big thing about it is it's proactivism versus individuals who are just okay with being reactive. Yeah. I mean, if we would have had candidates who leveraged social media and they were communicating consistently, they could have still been able to meet and have conversations with their ward members. And I think that's a problem. I think also with the water billing issues, again, up until the last meeting, I can only speak for Ward 6 and really other wards, the amount of people they're making it seem like 1 or 2 people, it's a lot of people that are having issues. I mean, I took me 8 months to get a bill. But the thing is, that's the tone.
We all know it's not just the top.
That's what that is at this point.
It's the top. Election day, when I was out electioneering, I mean, people were just running up to random folks and asking about the water. Can you do something about the water?
Can you help me?
Vote.
Some of it's simple as, can you just get me through to talk to somebody? Like me showing up at the city hall could have been something that my family members should have been able to do over the phone,
Right.
but wasn't able to get through. When they came down there by themselves, was treated not even like they were an older citizen of the city, where you should probably take a little care and break this down. Told them they had a balance due. My family member was upset because it's automatic. I go back up there with my family member the next day. It's I can't see anything until I press it, because you're telling me a little bit of information. Being that I know systems, and I've even worked call center for years, I know what you can see. If you can tell me that much, you can tell me if you see it. Print it out. When you print it out, he got a positive balance.
Wow.
So we're standing here arguing, and you're looking at a positive balance. I said, man, let me tell you the problem. Let me tell you about this bill. This bill does not show the payment from last time. Your bill dates are too close. Your system is messed up. You're going to freak people out in Petersburg. Tell these people back there with you. Tell everybody upstairs. You're going to keep getting fussed at because y'all put a mailer in the mail. You're sending out paperwork for everything else. Put a mailer in the mail. You could do anything to let your people know what is going on with your system, so you are not freaking people out.
But I think that's why it's so important for us to hold our members of the administration and council accountable. But I think moving forward, as well as, and kind of moving on to the next subject matter, I think it's important that we have council members that understand the importance of people in this community struggling and not having a voice and wanting somebody to represent them. And I think that when folks go to the poll in November, they have to keep that in their mind. This cannot be a popularity contest. It has to be a conversation with oneself about who's gonna help me get my water bill addressed, who's gonna help bring updated technology to our city systems. I think that those are the critical conversations that had to be had. But with that being said, when we talk about the importance of, like you said, working for your family member, working together. So right now, the city council doesn't necessarily have the best of relationships with other bodies. So with school being in session now, and we're looking at schools, you have a child in school, being kind of the focal point, especially with us having these virtual learning academies, how critical is it for our council members to be working with school board leaders to address the necessary funding, accreditation, programming? How important is that, do y'all think?
I mean, to be honest, I can speak from the parent and just being involved somewhat active perspective, but then I'm gonna pass it off to Giovanni because it really is an outdated thing. It definitely is an outdated thing that our system in Petersburg as a whole, we started getting Chromebooks about a year or two ago, when some localities have been getting them for a while and are now onto iMacs and things like that. I remember a couple election cycles ago, a question was asked, and it was in regards to the candidate that was running. It wasn't a local candidate, it was actually maybe a regional candidate, and it was in regards to STEM, bringing STEM down here, and the candidate's representative that showed up told us straight up, we were told that wasn't for the kids down here, that was better for the kids up top. So, wow. Yeah, and it's difficult for me. My daughter went through the gifted program, and she also was a member of Maggie Walker before we just brought her back down to the high school. And what I noticed is just a total disconnect on how we're moving down here in technology and teaching, and how other areas. And it's looked at as, you guys will figure it out almost. You all are getting the same SOL test, so as long as you're passing or failing, it adds up. So when COVID happened, crashed. Now I'm lucky, but I've been online, and I have friends that have kids in school, and it is a mixed market. If you are used to teaching, you're used to educating yourself, you have prepared your child, you have a room, it's set up, it's beautiful, all the wonderful pictures on Facebook. But if you're not, you're a working parent, you are losing your mind trying to figure out how is your child on school. There have been reports of parents just coming in here, your kids sleep. You can't work if you got to pay attention to your child. There are other things where there are areas in Petersburg where there is no quality Wi-Fi. Because the free Wi-Fi they give you, it is very funny how we forget that even in our services we are disenfranchised here, because we do not have the best internet. No matter what program they tell you have, at any point you can run your speed test, it's going to lie to you. It's going to lie to you.
And they're giving out hotspots.
It's hotspots, but the hotspots that they're giving out are the lowest tier level. lowest tier level, which means if I tell you I'm gonna give you 25, you're really only gonna pull about 9 or 10. So we have all of those issues. Teachers are already burnt out. My mother worked on school board, and I know other people that worked on school board. Sometimes school board and city council work together. Sometimes there's a disconnect because they don't go into the same areas. And those where the city council person and the school board member really need to team up. There have been some awesome teams of that out here, and I've heard about them. But once those two team up, then you have an amazing thing going. If your council area does not, or your ward area does not have a school, you need to team up with somebody closest to wherever your ward is going to, because you need to look at what those kids in your area are dealing with. And then you guys talk to your area and you bring it back to the meetings. We're doing this backwards as our administration. We're going to the table with our counterparts, then going back to our constituents and telling them what they need to do, what they need to deal with, and how they should feel and live. But we're not listening to what the issues are.
Right.
A lot of the times your city will help you if we know.
Right. And the thing is, I mean, just to give you some solutions, I mean, I think a couple months ago there was a tower they approved to build. And they asked the question, oh, can we add on things to the tower? Oh, yeah, you can. But at no time did anybody ask T-Mobile to say, hey, can you expand and provide free Wi-Fi for that area? And if so, how far can that go?
I didn't think about that.
But I'm just saying, but these are the things that we have to do as a city to leverage making sure people have aggressive thinking. Because the thing is, reality is, kids have a hotspot, but that doesn't help college kids who are in college right now, who are working or going to school virtually. It doesn't help individuals in this city who have lost their jobs and are looking for work and can't access a library, so they're sitting outside the library steps on their laptops trying to get Wi-Fi to do what they need to do. These are things that we're not thinking of. And the thing is that as a city, 6 months later into the pandemic, we should not be having a council meeting talking about, oh, we're going to use CARES funding for broadband. That's something our campaign has talked about from the very beginning. Use the CARES Act money now. It's easier to use it, benefit the people now in the short term because people are hurting right now, and then we can figure out the rest down the road. But to hoard money that people need in a time of hardship, it's just wrong. And that's what I'm saying. Like, even aggressive thinking about a tower and how we can leverage that. Going to T-Mobile and saying, hey, you have to these providers and saying you have this many towers.
That's something I have to look into.
Yeah, can you give us this? Can you provide this? If we're paying our city manager $180,000 a year, why are we not getting that out of the box thinking? Especially if that person does not come from Petersburg and they've traveled, they've been exposed to other cities in their municipalities, and again, maybe even areas with a higher median income or a higher majority of folks on the higher end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Why are they not thinking? So we're just paying somebody to hire a consultant to come in and do that thinking for us. At what expense? No parks and rec, no accreditation in our schools, and no major investment, no infrastructure, no focus on economic development. So again, there's all of these things that, again, the accountability and the transparency are so important, but when you talk about the collaboration, your ward council member and your ward school board member should have a great relationship. They don't have to like each other, but it's about working towards the common goal of addressing the issues that our people, our children, our young folk deal with, and our elders as well. So with that being said, this fireside is probably going to go long, but length of council meetings. I moved into the city in July of last year. I heard about council meetings. I never really went. I really started my involvement when we went virtual. And even those are long. So I can just only imagine. I heard horror stories about folks not getting out of meetings till midnight. So how, as individuals in two different ways, you know, from a policy and also a space that advocates for so many changes in our city, but then also as somebody on the ground with their finger on the pulse, how do we begin to address the length of council meetings?
No meeting should be 5 hours long. Anywhere. You're not going to accomplish anything. I think the first meeting that I attended, and I admit that I cheated, it was supposed to start at 6:30. And I looked at the agenda and it said it was in closed session first. So I came a little late, at 8. And it's still in closed session. And I'm looking around at all these people standing around talking, and I said, so you mean to tell me these people have been standing here for 90 minutes?
Wow.
And the meeting ended at midnight. And I think towards the end, and I think this was the same meeting, whereby there were high school kids who were on the agenda to speak, and they spoke at 11.
Wow.
I think it was a school night, I'm pretty sure it was.
Probably.
How do you plan that? How do you put high school kids that have to get up in the morning all the way in the end? That is just absolutely horrible planning. And it's happened multiple times. Even one of the virtual meetings that started in the middle of the day, at noon, I think that it ended at 6-ish, something like that. Was it later than that, close to 7? I don't know. And later, one of the council members said that or the mayor, he said that if this were a regular meeting, we couldn't have done this because we would have been out at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I think that part of the reason behind that is that when you listen to the council members sometimes address the issues, like the housing project that Councilmember Myers wants to work on. And I keep saying because I take, immaculate notes during the meeting.
I follow you, yeah.
And I remember this stuff. Why do you keep asking the same question about this project? Why do you not understand what this is? And it happens month after month after month where they keep explaining this. So my point is that they appear to, many just seem to not look at the agenda until 5 minutes before.
Yes.
And that's the reason why the meetings drag on, because I've been sitting there and I say that this person they've never looked at this before. I can tell that they didn't look at this right before they sat down. And everyone else has to suffer for that. And it just it drags out not only the legislative process, but just us having to sit and watch you fumble through this.
Yeah.
And have the same items explained over and over again. It's an insult to everyone's intelligence.
And just to bring it all back into perspective, you literally, if you go to elementary school, they give them breaks, nap time after a certain amount of time. You go to college, our classes are scheduled only a certain amount of time. When you're at work, you're required to have breaks and 15-minute lunches and all these wonderful things, certain amount of time. It's so that your brain can rest and regroup.
Right.
2-5, it's almost like interrogation. It's just almost like that. And the problem is they're not functioning. By the end of these meetings, I'm not going to say all of the council doesn't do this, but there's some crazy actions that go in, some tones that get yelled, some people getting up and walking out while people are talking. That's because you're sitting too long. And
right.
You're distracted. Not only are you distracting what's going on up there with you, you're distracting the rest of us because you don't look like you're together. These closed sessions are illegal.
I want to add that the first meeting that lasted until midnight, by the time 11 o'clock came, people were just laughing. Like everyone in the back was
You're delirious.
Like, this isn't over yet? Oh my God, they're still
You're
talking.
delirious. And I'm not going to say the closed session illegal. I'm going to say the time frame that they run is got to be looked at. Because, like you said, I don't believe that they all of them look at the agenda package. I know they get it before.
They're going over it during
and when we get it, it's 160 pages. But like I said, you have to really look.
300
If you go inside, a lot of the meat and potatoes is on the inside, and they're trying to wait you out. The problem we go back to transparency and communication and things like that. They switched these meetings. These meetings were already in the evening, so that little joke about how this would have lasted till 2 should have been embarrassing to that leader. As a leader, you're not organized if your meetings have to go like that. Something is wrong at your table if your meeting is ran 6 hours.
Yeah.
You need to take your people and have a private meeting with them. Me as mayor, I'd have to take my council and be like, listen, we get in here at another meeting at 6 hours. I know y'all not looking at this agenda package.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If you want me to support you come around, you need to look at this stuff and study this and be serious about your constituencies. Otherwise, don't step foot back in here, faking the funk up here, wasting our time for 6 and 7 hours. But it's hard to do that when we all doing the same thing.
Right.
And I think it's also difficult when you, I think it's also important when we look at the fact that even in the meetings, folks are disinterested as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even council members look disinterested. They're on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
They're, again, one of the most important things we have to utilize this election cycle is know that whoever you vote, make sure they read that packet before they go in. Because it's so critical. I mean, again, government should not be, it's like when you go to the DMV.
It seems simple, but it's kind of important.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what you're meeting about.
I mean, it's your job.
Legislation.
It is. It's about efficiency. How do we make it more efficiency? Again, if you know what you're dealing with and you know what you talked about, closed session to be quick. You talk about the important matters that are you're legally bound to talk about in closed session. You come out, you go through those presentations, you have those conversations, you debate whatever you want to debate. Again, you've already had your conversation with your constituency, so there's no really, you can put forth what they're suggesting, vote on it, move on. Let's go.
Yes.
Moving on, there was some breaking news that just came through. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that just came through. I got that information. I wanted to break that to y'all. So condolences. My mood kind of dropped because that's a hit. It's a hit, and yeah.
I'm gonna tell you something. A lot of great people have left us this year, and I call it the Revelation year. And I call it the Revelation year because it's now other folks' time. They've done their work,
Mm-hmm.
and as long as they're here, we're gonna depend on them to continuously do this work. When they leave us, they leave that to us to continue their legacy.
Passing the baton.
Everybody got a season in a lifetime,
Yeah.
and sometimes you don't know you're activated until the space gets made for you.
Right. So, with that being said, you made a good point about the season of changes among us, and I think that early voting started today, and it'll lead all the way up until the week before the election. I'm not going to speak much to national, but definitely for this city, in terms of city council, I think it's so important to realize that this is a year of change,
Yeah.
and I think that we have to press the importance of making our vote count.
Yeah.
With that being said, how can we support our community? So I guess I'll pose a question to you, Brandi. As somebody who's on the ground, you have a finger on the pulse. As early as this week, you're out protesting the fact that council voted to have virtual meetings all the way until March, which means if I get elected, you probably won't see me until March. Just a heads up. So realize that you're not going to be able to have that face-to-face engagement in official capacity of your newly elected members of city council. However, you went out and you protested that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was so dope. So from your capacity, what does that support mean? How do we get folks involved? And why is that type of activism so critical to holding our administration accountable?
So I've begun understanding that there's two versions that we need to both actively be in. There used to be a war with one type of activism versus another type, and that is those that are actually on the ground, in those marching, in those riots, showing their faces, versus those policy changers that are saying, hey, we got to get in there and focus on legislation. That's always been a battleground with activism, because one feels like they're both equally important. But when you're in it, it's like, we got to act now. Acting now doesn't solve the future.
Right.
That's how it goes. But we need both.
Mm-hmm.
Because they got to see you.
Right.
If they don't see you, they continue what they're doing.
Right.
So we got to halt what they're doing right now so policy change makers can swoop in.
Yeah.
So as long as we in here starting fires, you too busy trying to put my fire out while my team back here getting to work.
Mm-hmm.
So we need both of them on the ground. The biggest thing in Petersburg is listening, working together. A lot of things sprang up, in this 2020. And sometimes in the midst of that, we all can be activated, and it becomes not enough, too many chiefs, not enough Indians,
Yes.
and not understanding that there can be many kings. There can be many kings at the table. It takes many kings of many nations to help us rule this world. So we can't all just be like, mine is the best, or listen to me. In fact, don't give me all of the same opinions, because guess what? Your sect got some issues and some gripes over there. My sect is a little bit different. Because I don't go over there, I don't know. But if I pool with your sect, because we got a common enemy, now we really in their face. And now we getting education and leadership, and we can get it. So the biggest thing for Petersburg is getting out there and actually putting your ear to the ground, listening to the people you thought you never listened to.
Right.
And when the people tell you, I don't want to talk about it, that's when you need to find out what they not want to talk about.
Right.
Now, I heard that vote, but I actually thought that was leaving the option open to have it virtual through March. So I must have overlooked that in the midst of my typing, because that's a big deal. I would absolutely I think I would have been outside with you if I had known that.
Because it was, yeah, it's only virtual. They're leading virtual only into March, right? That's where we're sitting at.
And I, we can double back and just fact check, but the premise of it is somebody thought it was a good idea to wait till March.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. And it's like I don't understand. We're the phase that we're in. We're up to 200 people right now.
They have the idea if it's the option.
But if we're gonna do that, cool. How are you guys gonna get out here and talk to us though?
Right.
That's what I want to know.
And that's the thing I mentioned when I was able to talk. It was talking about even again when you talk about reading the agenda that had that proposal to extend us out another 3 months had the old executive order that only had a maximum of 10 people.
Oh, so it wasn't even updated.
No, I updated it.
Oh.
I verbalized that. I said, no, it's 250 people, it's executive order, so on. So again...
Oh, and that's right, because I believe that Barb Rudolph mentioned that the city's been in, phase 3 for
Yeah, we've been in a
and
while.
that they had
We was at the fire station in Heavy.
Right, so that's the thing it's about. You're right about that. And I think one thing that we may understand from being in DC is that here it's really exacerbated, but there's silos. Inside these silos don't like to talk or engage. And it's so important, especially now when we require every stakeholder in this city at the table. It's so critical that we all have to come out. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to come out of the woodwork. So I don't care what group you're in. I don't care the beef that you have with somebody before. We have to come together. That's the only way that we can see any kind of measurable change. And again, it's about...
And I'm used to engaging elected officials, so it's a lot more difficult here when you have some that you just never hear from except for once a month.
Yeah. And then when you see them, nothing said, it's very superficial conversation, and it's not driving down to address the needs of the constituency. Again, I think that's why it's so important that we get on the ground, we let our voices be heard, we picket, we protest, but then also, like you talked about, we have to push for systemic change by elected officials being able to get in and make those necessary changes and who understand what public service is truly about. It's about serving the public, not your own special interest. From your perspective, though, as somebody who's worked policy, somebody who understands working with public officials, because you work with quite a few, what do you think are ways that we can mitigate these troubled waters at this time and get to a place where we can bring everyone together to, you see, a resolution?
Where to start? I will say that I have to give the city a little credit for mentioning the public engagement office.
Yes.
Because I had just coincidentally mentioned that I'd worked in a municipality that had one and cited some other cities that had that as well, because the thing about government is that no one likes dealing with City Hall anywhere. No one likes dealing with government. It's never a pleasurable experience. And so the purpose of a public engagement office is to have a person or a group that's responsible for the consumer experience or for the citizen experience, because Petersburg is no different than many other similar inner cities, whereby they're trying to dig themselves back up from decades of collapse in the past, the industrialization, etc. So in that process, the complaints that come in, your child is having an issue with your the hotspot. You got a hotspot, not that they're saying this, but if I get to this, then fine. But otherwise, the issue's taken care of. I'll get 3 of those. Oh well, it's 3 people versus 30,000. Whatever. I'll just slide and slip over there. That tends to be what happens. Public Works, the same thing. Someone's trash has been picked up. A couple of those slips pile up over there. No one ever thinks about those things. And so at least, whether it is Councilmember Cuthbert talking about people not answering the phone every single meeting, to have someone to be responsible for, to double back and check to see how the automated phone system is. Are there people who are still complaining about folks not answering the phone? That's one big step for accountability. I think that's helping in the city.
What are your thoughts about the Customer Engagement Center?
It seems a little superficial, but just saying, I think that it will be a little more helpful than some of us think. It looks like it's lipstick on a pig. But
I'm the biggest advocate for fussing sometimes when it comes to how top heavy our management is here. And I fuss not to disrespect anybody in their job qualifications, not to disrespect anybody in their previous work. It's more about, if we're paying you this amount, and I look at where you come from, I travel, I see where you come from, and then you come here, and you've been here so long, why don't you want to make us better like where you come from? And that is my concern.
Yeah.
So when we're picking up and we're adding on all these new offices, they may be needed, and I fussed like, but who is our community engagement person who is actually out here, because we decimated Parks and Rec, and Parks and Rec gave us a lot of that community involvement. So we brought somebody over to do that. Cool. I have some issues with that, but now that we got the people here, I need some type of communication and transparency about, if we're going to pay them, I need to see the work being done. And if somebody's stopping them, we need to know about it, because we're fussing about one or two either way. And so we have all these wonderful offices of engagement, so now expect some work. Because right now, citizens are engaging citizens. I see citizens in mass groups cleaning up this city. I see citizens in mass groups planning community activities, bonding things, churches doing little mini get-togethers in the safety, small groups getting together, and we're resting on the fact that citizens are getting fed up and doing it for ourselves, and forgetting that we stockpiling money, forgetting that we keep hiring people. And it's, again, not to downplay nobody's degree, success, or anything like that, but if we paying you, I just want to see your work every once in a while.
But go ahead.
I kind of come from the same thought process, and I've never really been that much against organizations or the city itself being top heavy. I think probably because I've mostly worked for top heavy places. But if, as you said, if you're going to have these people, then not only do they need to be doing their jobs, but if the complaints about how top heavy the city is are constantly coming up, then I think at some point that maybe some of the job titles could be explained. Just as a reminder, because I asked other friends and other elected officials and whatnot sometimes their thoughts on some of this, such as I've compared the number of deputy city managers here versus other places, and I said that I have nothing against this, because it takes work to bring a city like this back to life. It takes people. So I generally don't say anything when I see people come in. It's just, I'm asking, well, what does this person do? And sometimes I'm talking, what do you think that this is necessary? And I say, well, why am I having this conversation with you? The city should be telling us this. And my issue has always been, there's a lot here to sell of the city. And all it takes is for our elected officials and the administration to open their mouth and do the actual selling. And so many of these things will sort of take care of themselves, because when you show that you're excited and when you're engaging the community, then the public is going to decide to wake up and try and put a little more effort into things as well. But again, you have all of these people. Just tell us what you're doing. That's all. And I've always said that. I've said that I don't understand why I don't hear more from our government as far as what they're doing.
And I think the big thing about it is too, it's like, again, like you said, no disrespect to accomplishments and education, but what are the outcomes that you're producing measurable enough to indicate changes being made? So when we look at, we're doing better fiscally, but yet there's nothing that we can see in our community that's been changing or evolving or getting better, it does get frustrating for our residents. It gets frustrating for you and I think also with that piece of that, it's for instance with the customer engagement center, I think it's great. However, for a city that still has its park and recreations at phase 1 of the pandemic, where is this money going to come from? How are we going to pay these people? How are we going to train these people? How are we going to retain these folks?
And if you're doing something, just let us know what you're doing.
Right.
Everything that you're doing is not going to be in front of the public to see. And I know this from experience. You're doing all of this work, and people, I'm working, and I open Twitter and see someone complaining about, City Hall's doing this. To want to go and fight back. No, we're doing all this. You just can't see it. And that's because you have to open your mouth and communicate to share what the city says, share what your progress is.
And I think also, like, even with the engagement office, again, it's a great thing. However, again, there's just a lot of questions that need to be answered, because the mention of it just came randomly in the meeting. It was never a presentation. It was just randomly brought up, like, oh, we're doing this. It's going to be ready by this time frame. And even council and the city manager looked like, what? Everybody looked kind of surprised at that. So again, it's about, we should have known about that before it came to the council. Why is that information not being disseminated to us? Why are those job postings not being offered to us?
And that tallies into some of the committees that people keep applying for and get denied for.
They weren't online. I think I believe that tell me if I'm wrong. I thought that I'd seen the announcement that a lot of the boards and commissions were not online for people to, or the vacancies weren't there for people to even know what to apply.
And that's correct. Some of them are. I noticed probably a couple of years ago that we were supposed to have the Citizen Advisory Board, and it was me thinking there's got to be a link. You know, I'm thinking the council person's supposed to have the sense that you're supposed to talk to your constituents, but if you don't, there had to be somewhere to give a link between. So it's a citizens thing. So the board has been. Some of these boards have been on the site, like you said. Only certain links are highlighted for you to apply. Others, you do have to contact down to the clerk and say, can you send me an application? She will do that. I've done that. Once you complete the application and send it over, council is supposed to mitigate on that. Awesome. The problem becomes when we're taking personal vendettas into the good of the city and the numbers don't add up. At the end of the day, numbers got to add up. And then if you're going to make a decision, you got to come back and justify your decision.
Right.
It's not saying we're not going to disagree with you, but at least you told us why. So that my thing is always give me a chance. Don't be the one to put the foot on me.
Right.
Please don't. Tell me what I need to do better to make it the next time. A lot of the city positions, when you apply, if you look on the site, they're very basic on this site. Very basic. You're not going to find what you think that you should find until an announcement pops up that somebody was newly hired, and you're wondering where you missed that at. Now, I've applied for one major position in the past. It bothered me how that was handled, and I said I would never apply again, because until y'all get new HR, because I know HR, I'm not doing this with you, because now this is just in the hands of somebody that can just look at a name and say, I don't like you, I'm not going to pass this forward. So when I've had plenty of people in my years of speaking, I'll say speak out online, somebody will come and tell me their journey. And I've had several professors, doctorates, tell me they've tried to obtain positions here. My mother has her own personal story with applying for the city manager's office. She's a Juris Doctor. So at the end of the day, it is a pick and choose sometimes. And we've gone through some leadership changes, so sometimes it goes, well, these aren't the same people, but it's the same mentality.
So could that be the explanation in terms of why this perception that nobody wanted the job of city manager here in Petersburg when we had to go to Texas to get somebody? The thing was, it was just a thing of, I hate to use this term, but popularity versus actual ability.
Because I always tell people, with all the people like Giovanni that moved to the city, so we all done? Everybody in this city done. There's nobody in this city of wonderful people where everybody on this council supposedly lives that is smart enough to do the city manager job. That we had to go states away. We didn't go county away to any. I'm not disrespecting anybody and where they come. You can come from anywhere and come someplace and make something and probably be the best thing. But make it make sense. Texas is vastly different than Virginia.
And I completely understand. And I'll also add that with myself and the city manager being from the same place, and I had mentioned to her, I said that, you know, my snap judgment criticism was, when I looked at your resume, was that you came from DC government. I immediately said, I trust no one from DC government. Absolutely not. I don't like her. And I think even someone I work with was saying, you know, the woman's got a good resume. No, I know DC government. But otherwise, you know, hey, you know, trying to give a chance. But as I said, you know, and given our mayor structure, you know, the council manager form, and not having that person that's in front of the city that's talking to residents about what's happening, that sort of, in my opinion, rests on the city manager's behalf, because, well, the mayor's not, you know, the mayor's still only over one ward and not technically not over the city. I would think that, or would expect that she would do a little more of the speaking, to literally, you know, come out every single day. I want to see you in front of cameras.
Yeah.
I want to see local news.
Right.
And saying that Petersburg is open for business.
Yeah.
I want you to take
We
back
want
that
people to come here and
from
move.
up top and came down that said he would like to see his city manager more. How do you think that this community of close-knit people who we just love looking at each other, to include some of the city council members we can't stand, and it's not all of them. We still know your face and have seen you. Some of this mystery and the bang on the the going after the city manager is you really are a mystery. You look nice in the pictures, and when we used to see you at city council meetings, which is why I'm gonna tell you this, I enjoyed the city council meetings because this when I did get to see the city manager and she became real to me. and I could read her face, and I could see if she was on board, if she wasn't. Because sometimes we don't know, and we understand in politics, as in military, as in anybody that's ever worked in conformity, you got to be quiet when you're in front, you know?
Right.
So I'm looking sometimes, and I'm like, we harp on her, but does she know something we don't know?
Mm-hmm.
I can see it in her face, and then sometimes I can be like, she playing us. She playing us. But sometimes I can be like, I don't know, maybe she trying. These meetings over Zoom and everything else, you taking out the we don't know her. We haven't seen the family. Where's the last Delegate R? I love Delegate R. Because she'll pop up. Pop up in jeans and a t-shirt. Pop up with the family, I don't care, you know. It's a lot of politicians that's come through here and it'll just pop up, but we need to see our city manager because this is supposed to be your home.
And I'll add that just a year ago, in hearing, I'm being told about how Petersburg has been, brought back, and how we've made these types of fiscal accomplishments, etc. And we're, not where we were, say, 4 years ago. Good. Do a speech about it. I would.
It was a vision speech or something,
My initial reaction, and I've been the one who has helped in scheduling and planning some of these presentations in front of the city so that you're letting everyone know what's happening. Sell all of the good parts. But I said, the National League of Cities has a national conference. This might be a good time to, if we're really doing that great, then let's put on a presentation.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yes, to sell Petersburg. And I'm not saying, to get up and lie or anything, or, to stretch the truth, but that's your platform, right? And so when you have that type of audience and in front of people to show how you've accomplished bringing the city together, there's actually something in having that type of momentum behind where people will actually decide to come and invest.
But I think it's also important, one thing that you said, Brandi, was, again, it's not disrespect, but there has to be a humanistic factor, an invisible presence from our leadership. Seeing them come on a Monday to a business in Old Town or walk into Ernestine's table off of Halifax and say, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, our new business that opened up further up Halifax, you stop in and say, hey, how you doing? I mean, I think that from our representatives, that means so much, even if you're not in a ward. And I know I was in an establishment and Tresca just walked in. Councilwoman Tresca, and I was like, oh shoot, like really, like oh you come here too, like
but she's amazing.
But it looked and it felt good. You could tell that the intent was pure. I think that from our representation, that's something that can be worked on either win or lose next year. Is that presence, being present, being visible, excited to be there and engaging. I think that that's something that would be advantageous for
any. That doesn't require any legislation.
No, it doesn't. It's just that really turns people. It really motivates people. Exactly.
And I hate to throw a plug out to all of the candidates that run. I mean, all of them. Everybody that's running right now. That's the way you guys have been handling yourself and showing the visibility is important, and it's disheartening because I would have thought that the incumbents would have realized that that's what we need, because citizens been coming out for this, and you should have paid attention. And it lets us know that everybody should get out and vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for or how to vote. I'm going to just say this. You vote for people that you see out here doing strong leadership and strong work. And when I say it that way, because if you don't, you're going to blink and they're going to get in that back room and they're going to be in sessions and you're never going to see them, because that's not what they were about at the beginning anyway.
You segue right into that, because I was going to ask, as somebody on the ground, someone that's worked in social justice, how do you motivate people to vote this election cycle? And also people who haven't even registered yet, or people who haven't updated their registration, because there's a lot of that going on in our city. You mentioned good parts, but how else can you expand on that, the importance of voting in your role and getting people excited about that? It's
knowledge. A lot of it is just knowledge. All that we've been talking about is just different levels. People don't activate until it affects them. Mm-hmm. So because Petersburg is so affected on these different levels, now we're activated locally. So the biggest other thing is we need to teach it younger. Yeah. We're activated, I'm activated because I own homes and my parents are here and I'm involved. But at 19, 20, 22, 24, 25, can't say I was really activated. We're in a wonderful time of activation because everybody from 6 to 2 is activated. Yeah. So every social issue is affecting. We got to keep that momentum. We got to keep that momentum. We're having topics of discussion about Petersburg, but we almost have to realize as leaders, we have to take a step back and look at the big piece of the pie. So while we have people working on that on the inside, we now have to teach our young people the importance of how to get this stuff done long-term, long range. That's paying attention to working with school board as far as going into the schools, poli-sci classes, extracurricular things. Our Petersburg extracurricular list, this does not always look like our white counterparts at their schools. They have things like poli-sci club, debate team, and things like these prepare you for the real world. Now we're getting on that track, but again, this is our election season, Petersburg. This is our election season. If last season didn't teach us anything, last season was our activation season because everybody was running last season. So that's what got everybody, interested. So that's our number one thing. Get people knowledge and knowing, getting it out there. We're going to have to curb some of the COVID scare because there's confusion about ballots when they're being mailed and not. We can actively go and say, hey, let's get together. This is one polling station. Can we get times? If everybody in your ward from last name A to C, this is your time to go to your polling station and vote. Please adhere to this. This is nothing but council and city management getting together and putting up a plan for their city and their voting, sending out stuff. This is any big corporation marketing, advertising, sweepstakes thing. You just got to think broader and think outside the box. Sometimes it's out the box issues, but it really is, we're already activated. Right. If we miss this season, though, we need to have this conversation again. Because then we're going to have a problem. Because we don't know what's the world's going to be going on.
And the only thing when you mentioned about what happens if you blink, there's a reason why I've mentioned like a lot of what some people feel like it's, I don't know, either it's fear mongering or it's me showing some worst case scenarios of how when you blink in a city like this, there is such a thing as gentrification that happens.
Yeah. I mean, you saw that in
you
DC.
better blink real.
I mean, it happened in DC.
You.
I mean, I would leave an establishment and see nothing but chaos, and you blinked, and a year or two later, it was all high-end lofts.
Richmond's like, I have a friend that's out there.
It's not that it's, it's new residents that are the problem, or it's people that it's home, or that it's just people flipping homes. It's the elected officials. It is the backdoor deals that we're talking about now.
Now, speaking of backdoor deals,
and how people choose, whole communities to wage a war against, to get rid of neighborhoods, etc.
And we're seeing that. I mean, even more recently, and again, I'm going to leave names out of it.
I witnessed a lot of very evil things happening in the gentrification process in DC. Like, I used to share videos, like fight videos in meetings, because it was a whole side of town, like the poor side of town. They were all killing each other to try and take over the neighborhood.
Wow.
And so, yes, police would be hauling people out, folks were fighting, people were getting slapped, all of it.
So when we're talking about gentrification, more recently we had these proposals that made their way out into the light about properties being sold for $10,000, $3,500, $5,000. Some of these properties are the Titness Building that's in Ward 6, AP Hill Community Center that's in Ward 6. Yeah. The sports complex was on that list, they got taken off, and there's a slew of other pieces of land that hasn't been developed in other buildings. What are your thoughts on that? I'll start with you. What's your thought on it?
As far as city-owned property, I remember, I think one of my first arguments that I had here was someone shared a list of city-owned property that was for sale. There was something like 45 or 70 some addresses on an Excel spreadsheet. And I immediately said, what is this? Like, there's no picture, I don't know what this is, and I don't know, I was berated by some citizens over that, but you give me an address, so what, I go drive over there, I don't know exactly what I'm looking at, I look at a street map, is it the parking lot, is it the slither of grass in front of it? I had one instance when I first came where I tried to do research on a property that was on the list for a private school, and whatever the case was, I think hours went by, and I think I found out, I don't know if the city didn't own it anymore, we couldn't find what realtor was representing it, and I threw my hands up, and I've not attempted that again. But the presentation that I received of this list, and the amount of effort that I went through to try and figure out what the hell do you own so that I can get through this process, I said, well, no wonder you have all these things on the roll. You know, this is literally impossible to get to. I think that I was trying to reach whoever was in charge of economic development, who was temporary at the time. Are they still temporary now? Probably. And I think there was one person in the office. You have a city of 30-some thousand people. You have one person. I think I worked in a city of the sixth the size, including 3 or 4. So, you know, as far as selling properties for $10, I mean, as far as where Petersburg is situated, we're in between 3 highly gentrifying areas. There's Richmond, there's Virginia Beach, you know, and DC a little bit more north. So I've always said that naturally the economics are on an upward trajectory. People are going to move here. People are moving here. I think that home prices were shown to have gone up earlier this year. So with that being said, if people are showing interest, there's not a reason to be selling things for $10. If you can do your part of doing the basics, things like cutting grass, taking care of the streets and the curbs, which sounds silly, it shows that the city's doing something, and so others will naturally follow behind and actually invest. It's very simple, and then you won't have to sell things for $10. But we tend to skip, or municipalities tend to skip their part of what they're supposed to be doing, because it's easier to give something away for $10.
And that's been one of the most hilarious
And that's
fights
where the
and
whole friends
conversations.
and family plan comes in.
And that's what, like, most of the, right there, friends and family. The hilarious part of this conversation and with the $10 properties is like layers. I love things that have layers, so we can dissect these layers. These layers start, number one, why is $10 the set amount? Where did that amount come from? I need more communication on that. So we're going to start off by saying the reason you're getting this backlash, City Council, is we don't know where you're coming up from this information.
Right.
So we're starting off at $10. Everybody and their mama know that if I get word I got a $10 property anywhere near me, I'm going to get up some coins, some quarters, and I'm going to get this $10 property. Now, if you deal in this area, you know, you understand there's some issues with that. You may get this $10 property, but you might be held to the standard of bringing it to code.
Right.
You might have a certain amount of time frame, so you have to have a lot of money. That's why they're giving it to you. It could be they're just offloading it. You know, they could have bought it from somebody else. Could be 50 million and one reasons why you started at $10. But on the flip side, there's some properties we know that daggone shouldn't be $10. We don't know why you're giving them away from $10. We could make so much more money. Then there's the problem of who sees this magical list and how do we get this magical list? When is the time to turn in paperwork for the magical list? Why do we only know about the magical list at city meetings time? And you're not going to tell me you don't know how to auction houses. You're not going to tell me you don't have the common sense enough to go ahead and put an ad in the paper. You're not going to tell me you don't have the common sense enough to put some type of package proposal together for the citizens. The other realm is there are so many groups that have come forward after these properties have came out as on chopping block to be bought and gone, wait, hold on. We came to you, city. We wanted to work this. What is going on?
Yeah.
So it is a ball of confusion with these $10 properties. And as long as it maintains a ball of confusion, there are going to be some deals that are going to be legitimate, and we're looking forward to. There are going to be others that they just slid in, the city gave them to them. It's going to be a lot of people slighted. Like, wait, where's my goal?
That the one property that I spent like a whole morning and afternoon doing research on to pitch to someone. After I was told from the realtor who was listed that he no longer had this project, they no longer had this listing, as well as all the others that were under his name, you know, I dropped it and I said, you know, we'll revisit this later. And then I think a couple months went by and I happened to read in the newspaper that, you know, oh, so-and-so just decided to purchase this property and do such and such with it. I said, I didn't even know that they still had it. How did this even happen?
Right. I think the bigger thing is
Transparency and communication.
Well, that's how it is. Just give people a fighting chance.
Many of my complaints are not even legislative based, aren't even based on legislation. It's just about your transparency.
Yeah.
And
Give me 1 second, I
speaking.
want to fix this. But I think that as we, my apologies guys, I think that as we begin to have that conversation, one of the things that we have to look at, I'm going to see if I can just keep this up. Okay. Do you mind watching this? And if so, just we have to hold it. Do you mind doing that for me just in case? We're going to wrap up. So one of the things, I'm sorry guys, we kind of went up for a minute, but one of the things I think it's so important to understand is the fact that there were a lot of community members who were from the faith-based organizations, from nonprofits who were interested in AP Hill Community Center.
Yeah.
They had proposals, they had back grant funding, they made the presentation to the deputy city manager, the city manager, and then ultimately went to a location I'm not going to say because that's going to divulge too much information, and had a meeting where the decision was made to put AP Hill Community Center up for bid. That was back in May. So now or May, June, so now we're in September, and all of a sudden, we're pushing forward with this property just being identified as something to be sold. Why not auction it? And again, I know we're not there to the point where we're making a decision on it yet, but I think another piece that kind of frustrates me is the fact that when we look at processes, being somebody that's worked in government, being somebody that has worked at state level and federal, and even being a nonprofit, I understand that there should be a fair gold standard across the board. So that way we know from the beginning there should be no one even requesting or proposing $10 because we are standing firm on the value of our properties. Even if the necessary cost to bring it up to code or fix it is going to be in the millions, I think we have to understand the economy like you said. When I lived in Woodbridge back in the day, one bedrooms or efficiencies were under $1,000. I would say maybe 9 years later, they're at maybe $1,000, $1,200. So we have to value our property. And I like to use the analogy like airlines because, I came from one, but why not do a long-term lease? I mean, you can lease the land, you can lease the property, assist in getting it up to code, and then you still own the property. Maybe you're doing a long-term lease for 50 years, but that's still providing an alternative that when you're done with that or that person is done or you wipe your hands clean, we can expand into it. We can still have that land. If you sell up all of our property and all of our land when you get to a position of needing to grow and expand, you have nothing. You've sold it all. APO Community Center, there's so much that we can do to it as a city. Again, when you look at selling it off to somebody else, you have to be very critical in that contract. Is it open to the community? Do you have free meeting spaces? Again, remember, if you sell it off to somebody, it's theirs. They can do whatever as they please.
I mean, it would be nice if there was if they'd mentioned during the council meeting before the part that this was going to be for sale, the reason why it's being sold for $10, stating that, well, we tried to sell it on the market for the last year, 2 years, and then, no one bid on it. And so this is the reason why we're doing it, because otherwise it just appears sneaky, because you might have a good reason. I don't support it at all, but at least if you explain to me why you're giving something away for pennies, it might make some sense.
Right, and that's the thing too, it's like, again, when we talk about the process to do it, if you put it up for bid, no one bid it, if you put it up for sale, no one purchased it, then I could understand giving it away for less than what the tax assessed value is, but when you get to the point where you're only putting down a $1 deposit, the city's paying for closing costs. I mean, when I moved here, I wish the city would have paid for my closing costs. I mean, I'm helping I'm helping to bring the city back as well.
Right.
Anybody who fixes their homes, anybody that moves here, anybody that buys new, I think that we're all doing our part. Why don't you help us out as well? Not just businesses, because real estate tax and paying your water bill and property tax does go into the pot as well to assist with the city. And so I think understanding that economic growth in this region is coming. It's just a matter of when, and COVID's not going to stop that. We've seen it come all the way down the I-95 corridor. And we're having people leave the 757, the peninsula area, coming this way. We're seeing people leave the DC metro area and Richmond area coming this way, because from Washington, DC, all the way to here, there are no houses for under $150,000. Trust me, I've looked. And
similarly, I compare markets all the time.
But there's nothing. So this is a really good sweet spot, and we have to understand that, but we have to look to grow and not give away everything just yet. Because the same property you're trying to offer up, or someone's proposing for $10, can be worth so much more down the road when we raise our median income, when we can start having, Whole Foods and all these other businesses, big businesses coming to Petersburg. That property will be worth a lot more than.
I just would like to know what would happen if you put it on the market under a regular market rate.
But we haven't tried it.
To give it a try. Some of them have. But again, if you just tell us that you've tried this, just open your mouth. That's
right, and put it out there, but then also work with.
Apparently, it's for them.
But then the thing is about it, it's working with because there's people in this city who would love to expand their business or start a new business.
Absolutely.
We have, like, for instance, I always use this as an idea, like the Titness Building or even the Peabody. When we look at Peabody, why not create spaces for small businesses to be housed there? Why not create spaces for individuals to have meeting spaces? Or even now, when we're leveraging virtual people working remotely, why not have it APO Community Center working as a remote work location where you're renting out space to just work there?
When you were mentioning the difference of the median incomes of surrounding municipalities, even myself, well, recently I was working on a city pitch for this area, and a part of that would be mentioning what our local economics are. And if you're trying to sell the city and you know that people are coming from other areas, I think that one of the major parts of selling the city would be to show what our economics are, to just some of our statistics to try and bring people in. And yet none of that's on the city. None of that's on the city's website. Generally, it's one of the main things that you see in any economic development section, which says to me that they're not necessarily trying that much. So I have to go and dig in and find these numbers myself. So I'm just saying that's another one of my gripes with them. And that is contributing to them selling homes for $10 because they're not selling it to anyone else.
It's not progressive thinking at all. It all.
So my last two questions, the first one is, do you think that personal philanthropy of individuals running should be a guiding factor in choosing who to support?
No. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because you're allowed to, contribute and do whatever you want to do based off of your own personal experiences. If it just happens to be something I want to contribute to or something that I wholeheartedly believe in, that's a plus. But your political views and what you're going to do for me shouldn't weigh in on that. Now, if one of your philanthropies is I just want to go out here and murder animals, I got to debate on that more. But for the most part, whatever you choose to participate in, as long as when you come to me and when you're in my ward and in my city and you're talking about your role as a leader, you stand on what this community wants and what this family, that's what I call Petersburg family, wants. We all might help pitch in one day to your philanthropy, but we should not make our choices based off of what people do on their extracurricular time.
You're a legislator and your job is to legislate. And as long as you're able to do that and to represent the community and to improve things as we all see fit, then you're fine by me. If you happen to represent any other, any personal interest of helping various facets of the community on this side, that's fine, but that's not your, I'm more concerned about you handling your chief job responsibilities.
Okay. Do you believe the administration is not working with every stakeholder in the city to create the necessary change in our city? I'll start with you.
No, I don't even have an explanation. Just based on our entire conversation on how they communicate or the lack of communication, I think that we know the answer to that.
Okay.
It's not happening.
Not every stakeholder, and the Sept, I'm almost stumped with Giovanni. Like we've gone over so much during this time period, but ultimately I don't know if they've just gotten comfortable. And sometimes comfortability has you believing that you don't need to talk to your people no more because you've already heard it, and not understanding that change happens all the time.
Right, and I think that that's a continuous kind of insanity-like process we go through where, and again, I've only been here for a year, so I didn't see it all, but it does seem as if for the past year that I've been here, I haven't heard from my representative, I haven't even seen them. But the moment
ain't seen mine, well, I see him in the suit.
but the moment the election cycle starts, like now after Labor Day, oh my gosh, they're in my neighborhood, they're present. It's like it's about setting the tone and not getting too comfortable, understanding that your results, your re-election campaign is actually the work that you do in 4 years.
Yeah.
That speaks for itself. The last question we'll wrap up is, what can we do as the residents of Petersburg to ensure that our voices are heard? Both of you have different platforms. I know that we all in this group have intersectionalities when it comes to like the C3 agreement and your agreement with Petersburg Solution and kind of your values, as well as mine as a belief in One Petersburg coming together to make this city so many different things. How do we get people to understand that? How do we motivate them to know that their voice has meaning?
So, like, most of the time when we were talking about all the different groups, and we mentioned a lot of the Facebook, social media groups, which drives me nuts. Please, people, understand that there are social media Facebook groups, Facebook functions, as you can have many groups, and you can join all of them. They're not gangs. They're Petersburg Today, Petersburg Solutions, Clean Sweep. It's a bunch of them. You know, we're going to help you elders, because some of you elders like it's a gang. I get it. Now, that's not what you need to worry about. Y'all worried about the wrong thing. Social media, you can log off Facebook. You don't have to engage in that conversation, but there are groups on the ground. And that's what we need to, you guys, like mostly everybody get activated with. Move us out here. I work with City Not Divided. I sit on their board. I also do all types of work with Marlo and anybody else that pops up. Right. If you cleaning, we've gone out. I did function with Team Petersburg when we were cleaning and doing the parks. All it takes is for if everybody in Petersburg, some type of way, from babies to senior citizens, picks one way to get active in Petersburg, they'll start seeing and hearing, because your citizens are out here. And it's little things. If you're in a senior citizen's home, if you feel like during this COVID time, the city did not do enough so that you felt loved by your community, all of y'all senior citizens can get together and write letters and say y'all couldn't even send the city manager and the council around all this community senior living centers and drop off special packages or deliver a "we're thinking about you because we know your family can't get to you" type message. There's so much that you could be doing as leadership that activates us as citizens. So I'm gonna say the first thing to do is get involved in any and all. You don't have to dedicate. You don't have to pledge allegiance to the group to be able to work with them, okay?
Right.
I don't know why we create these groups and it's like, they're not over here with me, but they're over here with you. Right. I need people to understand I work with so many different groups outside of Petersburg. Those groups hit me up and say, how do you have time? Right. So when I get to Petersburg, you gotta get out your city to know that so many other realms, we all working together. Right. So in Petersburg, I don't care what the group name is, if you see an activity in your ward or you got the time off, go. And when you go, make a post. Say something.
Okay. And you?
All right. Well, absolutely. Well, the same here. As far as working outside of the city, I'm a campaign manager for a city council campaign in Hopewell. And as far as for Petersburg, one of the first things that I did was working to help create the local Republican committee. And I'm also one of the founding members of the Tri-Cities Young Republicans. But at the same time, I'm actually not that partisan, because I've always been one to work with both sides of the aisle, speak to members of the administration when I can. And to be fair, as far as their level of communication that I've been criticizing quite a bit, they have reached out to me, and I do give my, whatever type of advice I can to help, when I see fit. Folks have my number. I'm, available to speak whenever, and I have. And as far as Petersburg Solution, that's open to all. And one of the main things I've tried to do is just to bring about more transparency through new media. So the city council meetings, the live tweeting, that way it's, and some press conferences that I can manage to get to make sure that this information is out there in real time, that it's not missed. I think I mentioned that or suggested tweeting when I first came, and someone said, "Why don't you do it?" I said, I have to sit through 5-hour meetings. Right. But that does make a big difference, just as far as having a new level of having the information out there and writing about it as well. So digital media is a little more of my thing, but it's a type of given that other areas have, and elected officials tend to act differently when they realize that they're on record in the community. And I've noticed that.
So, those are great suggestions, and I think that one of the takeaways that we can walk away with is that we all can be involved in multiple different ways. Technology on the ground, and really, even in a old folks home. I hate to use that word, but I think there's every type of silo that you're in, there's ways to be engaged. So, with that being said, I know we've been going on for a long time and we'll end it, but again, thank you for joining this Fireside Chat. As a reminder, early voting has started, and check out our website for more information on that and the events that we have coming up. Y'all, thanks for joining us.
Likewise.
All right, take care, y'all.